name is John Howard. I'm employed here at Grand Island Public Library. I was going to use the word work, but that would be stretching the meaning. When I heard that Steve was interested in doing this, I volunteered to introduce him. So I'm going to read a little blurb here from the library. The Grand Island Public Library is proud to welcome author and Grand Island native Steve Werkmeister.
Hey John, you need to speak a little louder. And sorry.
Yes, I can speak loud.
Thank you.
The Grand Island Public Library is proud to welcome author and Grand Island native Steve Werkmeister for a special author talk on Thursday, July 24th from 4 to 5:30. A 1985 graduate of Grand Island Community College, that should be Grand Island Central Catholic, we bestowed an honorary degree on Steve. Werkmeister has carved out a respected literary career since his early days on the mean streets of East GI. He went on to earn degrees from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and currently serves as an English professor in the Kansas City metropolitan area. He resides in Lawrence, Kansas with his family. Werkmeister's work has been recognized with the Pushcart Prize nomination. And when I read that, I thought, I didn't know Steve had gone into the grocery store. But I did some research, and a Pushcart nomination is a national prestigious organization or award for excellence in short stories and essays. So it's very prestigious. Well done, Steve. And he continues to write actively, maintaining 2 blogs, one focused on literature. Steve has a couple of books that are on sale on Amazon. And I first got to know Steve 40 years ago. He was a member of the class of 1985 at Grand Island Central Catholic. And it was an interesting group of people. And they've all gone on to be successful people. The sculpture outside is from a Grand Island Central Catholic grad. A Catholic bishop is a Grand Island Central Catholic grad. We have successful people in education and medicine. Members of that class have served their country. There's a very talented class. In years of teaching, I've kind of started to categorize students into 3 categories. There's people who color inside the lines. There's people who color outside the lines because of their abilities or willfulness. And then there's people like Steve who don't know there's any lines. Steve was a great student. He was a kid that had good friends. He was a successful athlete. But what I remember the most about Steve is looking forward to the student newspaper that came out and reading wonderful things. I read Steve's stuff all the time. And I think Steve is a searcher. You know, he searches for justice and truth and love. And I feel fortunate to have taught Steve. I think he may be a better person, a better teacher. And I think his writing helps all of us too. So without any further ado, Steve. It's a tough crowd.
That was very kind. So this is weird. And part of me's hating it, honestly. Part of me wishes I was drunk. And there's always that, that's particularly reunions, I guess. I've only gone to one reunion, that was 10 years ago, and it was a sense of like either this was a really, really wildly successful seance, or I walked into my own funeral, because one of us is a ghost here. And yeah, it's hard to tell what, but so it's, thanks for coming out and everything. It's been a busy afternoon. I was actually born in Ogallala and grew up in Grand Island. I'm old school Grand Island, so Golden Point, Grand Island, Capitol Theater, Grand Island, Pier Park Pool, Grand Island. We also spent a lot of time in the library, which I think moved from over there. And partly because we were bored. It was a safe place to park your kids while you're at work if you're a single mom. So it's really cool to be back here. I'd like to start with this poem called Winding Sheet. There's this like, there was a kind of a contest where it's like, yeah, write a poem about your name, and I was like, I can do that, you know. And so I kind of came up with this, which called The Winding Sheet. Let me say what you see when you look at me. Something lumpy, dark, and hairy, a wretched tangle, an unhappy reminder, a thing best left forgotten or thoughtlessly misplaced, quietly gone for good. My ridiculous name, a job title turned plea, desperate in its need to be trusted, the tasteless insubstantiality of Steve, combined with the dermal incongruity of Werkmeister. Because I grew up in that kind of town, no one ever beat me up because I'm half German, only half Mexican. Every year in class, teachers would read my name from the first day roster, look everywhere but me. Some were better at hiding the surprise. Some panicked and broke out into Hogan's Heroes German. Oh, Herr Werkmeister, they'd say. Do you know what Werkmeister means? As if it wasn't a code I'd been learned since birth. As if the day my dad disappeared when I was a kid, it wasn't the only thing he had left. A Texas cop once stopped me, wondering what I thought of Shakespeare, wondering if I dug the art of Basquiat, wondering about my perspective on the collapse of communism and the New World Order, wondering if I had considered the possibility of life before death. I'm kidding, of course. The cop was wondering why I was walking in that particular neighborhood 2 blocks from my aunt's house. The cop made the face I'd known from cashiers and girlfriends' dads and airline agents, and asked, where did you get this name? My Nebraska license not matching the panoply of possibilities my skin suggested. 'Twas the swaddling clothes of my birth, said I. 'Twill be the winding sheets of my death. It was all my dad had to give me. So I went to Dodge Elementary, which, and I know I should be upset by this, I'm not really that upset, but it's the Dodge Dodgers. I don't know, they became the Dragons at some point, and I don't know how that happened or why it happened, or why I wasn't asked, but I'm a Dodger now, and actually I should say that I can casually cuss all the time, I'm sorry. Yeah, so with the Dodge, and it was a weird time. The 70s were a weird time growing up. And there are like 3 things that I really remember hearing. Not a lot, probably like a few times during the 70s, enough that I noticed, I couldn't take notes. Where there was like basically 3 things. One was, where are you really from? Which is always weird. Another one, this one blows my mind. It still makes me laugh. Are you a good Mexican or a bad Mexican? And it's like, well, I don't know. And then we found out at the end. And the other one was that the argument that the N-word was not racist. And and these all 3 actually came together in this one memory when I was little and at Dodge. And so, yeah, I wrote a poem about it. The one real quick thing about the poem, in the poem, so I quote the person who was talking, right? I used an asterisk, because she uses the N-word, so I used an asterisk over the I. When I read the poem, I just say N-word, so everybody knows what I mean. Also, it's a prose poem. I don't know what prose poems are. Honestly. Like, except that when I'm like the lineage, right, when I'm trying to figure out where my line breaks are, and it's driving me absolutely nuts, usually after about a week or two or a month, I'll go, screw it, it's a prose poem. It doesn't have lines. So, yeah, so it reads a little bit differently, but I guess it doesn't matter. This poem's called America. I was like 7 and easily confused, so I gave her my address, and she said, that's where you live, where are you from? And I still wasn't sure, so I offered the name of the town of my birth in western Nebraska, the town we'd left before memories blistered my mind. And she said, no, where are you really from? Like what country? And I said, America. And she gave me that look my mom had, like asking somewhere deep in her mind how my dad beat her to the leaving. So I said, my grandmother's from Mexico, and she said, oh, are you a good Mexican or a bad one? And she was in 5th or 6th grade, and she stood 2 steps above me by the side door of the school at the edge of the playground. And she had hair like Glinda's, the good witch from Oz, one of those Polish names that don't have vowels. Her brother was in my class. I was confused. Sometimes they said I was good, but I got in trouble a lot. My mom often said it could be the death of me yet. I just stood there and waited, and she said, there's good Mexicans and bad Mexicans, just like there's good Negroes and N-word. I didn't say anything. It's not racist, she said. A white person could be an N-word if he's bad enough. I was really confused. You're probably a good Mexican, she said. I just looked at her. I wasn't convinced. You're kind of stupid, though, she concluded, walking out of the shadows into the surety of the sun. I usually get a haircut, kind of like beginning, like spring, you know, kind of beginning of summer, and I get a summer cut and stuff like that. I knew that this reunion stuff was coming up, and we'd probably be seeing some people who are follically challenged. So I decided, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna make sure there's no doubt. Right? There's no way. So that's the non sequitur, has nothing to do with the poem. This poem's called Detasseling. But actually, this was kind of another one of those poems. It's like, write a poem about your first job. And I was like, I can write a poem about detasseling. Yeah. Sometimes the rush of bodies tearing across the roads, crashing through the corn, 2 or 3 of them honing in on the target, then a few rows over, just out of eye shot, you hear the beating. You know there will be blood on the bus ride home. Some boy will claim to have fallen, will not come back. The next day, Ronnie will say, he was just slowing us down anyway, there's more where he came from. And you'll know he's right, the cheap labor of the poor man's children, and you're just glad it wasn't you. The first thing you learn as they are 10 feet into a row, the corn closes behind you, and the field becomes eternal as hell. For a while, you might see the kids in the rows next to yours, maybe even the kids next to them. But soon they're just all noise, disembodied voices and scuffles that seem to come from everywhere. There's no direction here except forward, the leaves nicking paper cuts into your arms and neck. You don't want Ronnie or the other crew leaders to catch you. If they catch up, you're moving too slow. In cornfields, you slob through solid air. You can hear the wind rushing like a god past the tops of the stalks, uninterested by the fact that you're down there, stewing in the mesh of mud and leaves. You look like a supplicant, arms held on high. You're going into junior high and you're detasseling corn. Ronnie says that down in the field, it's hotter than the devil's asshole. You smile but don't hold his eye. It's almost the 80s. America's sick of losing. It's a time for brown kids to learn friendly distance. There are no other jobs for 12-year-olds, and there is no shame, and everyone on the block is noticing. Years later, you'll remember the girl you were too shy to talk to. 12 or 13, strawberry blonde and freckles like birds riding the high wind. It's her last day and she doesn't want to be seen. She sits in the 3rd or 4th row, a few seats in front of you. The next morning, Ronnie will say, she was a stuck-up bitch anyway. And he'll turn up his transistor radio when Rupert Holmes comes on and say, I like this shit. But it's a July afternoon, and tears like small blisters slide down her cheeks. Ronnie's in high school, and he likes to talk about what he's seen on HBO after his parents have gone to sleep. You know there are hurts so deep they leave no marks. and you don't know what to do, and you don't even know her. You just watch her stare through her reflection as central Nebraska rolls past. Fields impenetrable as fairyland forest. Silver irrigation pivots like stripped spines. The ditches, the fences, the hail-scarred signs. I didn't want to do just poetry or just prose. I kind of like threw in some excerpts from some prose I've written. So in between, and I really tried to focus a lot of the readings on the sense of like this is our 40th reunion and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of thinking of that, and this excerpt is just like a paragraph, but it comes from. Sorry, I'm thinking like 3 times longer to explain what's going on than it will to actually just read the paragraph. But if I don't, yeah, it might not make sense. So anyway, so I got this idea. One of my favorite short story collections is Jesus' Son by Dennis Johnson. He wrote this kind of semi-loosely autobiographical, right? And he wrote about the time in the 70s, Iowa City, right? The writers thing, workshop. And so I thought, you know, kind of like, well, what would be like a Gen X version of that, right? How would we write Jesus' Son? And so I started writing connected short stories on that. At this part in really all we need to know about the paragraph, the narrator is sitting in his backseat of his cousin's car. They're at a baseball game. Son, it's his cousin, her husband, and the narrator. Her son's playing Little League baseball. The 2 younger siblings are out playing with all the other younger siblings because you know how they all pack together. They're in the car watching the game instead of in the stands because they're also drinking screwdrivers and smoking joints. So they're at a Little League baseball game, stoned and drunk, and sitting in the car. The narrator's been really kind of thinking about his cousin, the family, the community, and all that stuff. He's thinking about William Langland, which is somehow biographical, a 14th century poet, wrote this great poem called Pierce Plowman. And it starts with this allegory called the Field of Folk, where basically you have this representations of hell and heaven, right? And in between this large field of people not knowing what the hell to do. He turns to Holy Church, right, in the 14th century. So he turns to Mother Church, who explains to him, this is what's going on, this is why. Okay, so basically that's it. But again, I wanted to share this because I was thinking about the people I grew up with as I was writing this paragraph, right? And the things we can do. As I sat there picking at the white string straining over the hole in the left knee of my jeans, I thought of her kids and their friends. Kids who might one day be a first kiss, or in a decade or so might relieve them of their virginity, or who might cheat off them in school, or die stupidly and be their first funeral, or break their hearts in so many other ways because we're human and we might not know much, but we do know how to break hearts. Kids who would become teens with them would spend long nights on the dirt roads outside of town, lying on a car hood, watching the stars, drinking cheap beer, devising ways to get the hell out, just like we did. Kids who were still kids. Kids who didn't realize that the paper boats they launched down the creek was a played-out metaphor for life. Their childhood dreams of soggy mush that would carry till their death. As the sounds of the game played out in the distance outside, I thought of Langland contemplating the field of folk and turning to Holy Church for an explanation of how things got so bad. All through the speakers buried under the dash of the Impala's rear windshield, Paul Harvey's voice droned on, sounding like a patrician uncle on Thanksgiving, talking through a football game, his mind gently soured by years of bargain scotch and high-back chairs. R.E.M. is right. Truck stop instead of St. Peter's. This one, this is an old poem. Yeah, I think I typed this on a typewriter. That's what this was. And it was written probably about that time. I should probably just say, it is modeled after Stephen Berg's poem Ritual, so that kind of gives some structure. but it's called Inheritance. Aluminum poles running with ice and rain propped a buffeting green canopy under a sky flat and gray as my father's dead eyes. Around me, the wind froze masks of pain. Later, we bid on Braunschweig crackers among the clatter of borrowed chairs. Mourners spoke of winter wheat. As the rain turned to snow, we spun slowly into night. That summer, she turned her tear-stained face towards me, whispered, "You never understood that Hamlet lived as Hamlet loved." Left the door key and walked away to her packed car, while I sat and eyed the beaded glass of gin, and in the confetti of reflection saw again that trace of his Holliver's face. Sometimes, a lot of you guys have known me a long time, and so this is probably familiar, but sometimes I get these ideas and they just kind of latch on. And yeah, it's only later, I'm like, oh, that was kind of weird. And so, yeah, so I had this idea one summer I was gonna write a bunch of psycho poems. And it's like, I'm sure poems about bad people and doing bad stuff. And I thought that would be fun. Anyway, I ended up with maybe half a dozen. This one's my favorite. It's called Austin. Yeah, here, sorry, I should put this, yeah, the other ones are okay. This one is like one of those ones, once in a while it's like, I've been writing a long time, and to be honest, I've never really been terribly happy with anything I've ever published. Usually I'm pretty happy that, like, you know, for a few days after I get a thing, we're gonna publish a poem. I'm pretty happy, and then usually within like 3 days, I'm like, oh, God, really, that poem? When I see it in print, and the first thing I want to do is grab a pen and start changing things, moving things around, right? That was the wrong word. So it's, yeah, this one I actually was happy with the voice, so that was one. But anyway, it's called Austin. Ain't no use in lying, it's hard to be sleeping when there's somebody crying from the floorboards under your bed. Every time I ask, Dad says it'll be a day or two, just find yourself something different to do. Might as well go mow the weeds. And Dad says, boy, you got a big imagination, the kind of dreaming that draws to it attention. Teachers and counselors and all manner of trouble. And just my luck, someone will show up with a shovel to see if your fiction's left bones. Now you'll have to tell me you've been feeling bereft. It's been a while now since your mom up and left without spoken word either since or before. It's as if she just sank through the living room floor. Another one of those ideas yeah, sorry. I'm just thinking, God, if I'm wrong and there is a God, I can tell this. But I had this, I was like, I'm going to rewrite the book of John. And I don't know why I was just satisfied with it. But so I remember I went through and I just started marking verses, right? Okay, this is a big poem, this is a big poem, this is a big poem. And I started writing, and I ended up maybe 20 poems or something from just from the gospel. This one, sorry, I'll read the verse, early translation that I had handy, I guess. Seeing his mother with the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, Jesus said to her, "Mother, there is your son," and to the disciple, "There is your mother." And I'm not sure why I didn't write down the numbers, but it has numbers. And you guys probably recognize it. It's during the crucifixion. Thinking about this verse, I was just thinking about the situation. I mean, they've had a really crappy week, right? I mean, Sunday is all triumph, right? You kind of come into Jerusalem, and they're hanging up the leader by Friday. So it's, you know, John at this point, they had the Last Supper, might have gotten a nap, got yelled at by Jesus for sleeping. People come in, arrest him. They're up all night now, by trial, crucifixion, everything. He's been up a long time. The stress is wearing. And this is something I think I had to learn through life, because thinking about that is thinking about times that we're all old, so, you know, we know how that goes, right? It's just somebody's dying, and you're waiting, right? You're waiting, you know, and that feeling that you can never really catch up, especially when stuff you're like in the hospital, stuff like that. It's like you can't process. Like you're processing everything 10 minutes later, you know, but they keep talking and stuff. So I'm kind of thinking of him and his mindset, you know, kind of watching mentally exhausted. The name of this poem is Cracks. And somebody's saying, this is Muslim advice, and you half turned and you realize no one else heard. It was his voice speaking in your head, saying it in your head, saying, I told you, but it's 10 seconds behind the world spin. Every reaction is shade truant, and you can't catch up, and you're just pushed along, pushed in front, trying to process what just happened when it's something else. And now you're next to his mom, she's holding it together. You don't see how, if you could just catch up, you would crack up, crack apart, crack from the inside. And now you realize you've noticed the flies, but not sure when you notice them, how long could it be now? How long have we been here in the ground? Ants, and it's too getting hot for spring, and it's gonna be a hell of a summer this fall already, and the fishing will be rough, and you hate yourself for wishing you could get past the dying to the death. Then there will be time to figure it out, but now just waiting, and he's saying, this is your mother, and it's real this time, everyone heard it. You look at her, she gives you a just nod look, and you're still falling back, so you just nod, and you can't see the packs cutting through the canyons, creeping through the cracks in your vision, but you know they're there. They're there, waiting for dark. Sorry. I wasn't sure what was next. Another excerpt. This one is, I just have weird, sorry, I'm trying to read my handwriting. So this is from that same short story collection. This is from a story it's called Gulls and Unstory, which I kind of hate now. I said out loud. I mean, it seemed kind of cool when I wrote it, but and it's about a kind of loosely based on a period of my life when I was living with a couple really good friends, and somehow we had evolved into the house where everybody kind of goes after the bars close or if nothing's going on in the bars. And we were honestly drinking or drugging like 5, 6, 7 days a week. And still working and still going to school and taking classes, but especially summers, holidays, stuff like that, the leash was off. And I thought, well, I should write, find a story in there. And like thinking about that period is, I couldn't find a plot, we put it that way. Right? There's nothing there because we were doing the same damn thing every night. Right? And it was hard to remember. It's like, what? I mean, it was a sense where it's like, somebody would come and like spend a night, or a week or a month, kind of thing. It's like, are you leaving? To help pay rent, and it was, but it was really, really tough trying to find like, what is something solid, or kind of something I could structure a story on. And I decided, rather than try to find that, I should just write it like I remember it, which was basically a story without a plot. So the story goes in very, it's like, I started messing with the perspective. And so I'll have like long snippets of dialogue where it's mostly like arguing about movies and music and stuff. And, but without like any, I don't ascribe the quotes anymore. So basically it's just people talking, but then it goes way too far out and it's kind of like these sociological type of statements about kind of the group and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got away from that. I just want to read a little bit of it for you guys. This is towards the beginning. It was the middle of December and finals were over and everything was shots and bombs and pints and pills. The Christmas desperation of cheap lights against the gathering dark, and the holiday noise before settling into the silence of midwinter. There was another tension, of course, sharper yet more abstract, a national sense that the center would not hold, for it was also the winter of 1990, the season of edgy expectation, the first winter after that promised end of history, the Cold War in the collective rear-view mirror and nothing filling the windshield but the wide horizon of the Pax Americana. The final decade before the new millennium ushered in utopia or dystopia or just more of the same. The inauguration of a new world order, when even the Simpsons were still fresh, the Peter Bush America was preparing itself for war, and for Nirvana, for Seinfeld, even if it didn't quite know it. The world slipping from the greed is good of the Reagan years to the heroin chic of the 1990s. But you weren't thinking about that. Or you were, you weren't. To you, as merely guitar feedback in the cacophonic concert of life. Actually wrote this around that same time. And it's called Waiting for Spring. Listening all night to Joy Division and smoking ditchweed off an empty beer can, I realized that just to be alive would have been heroic enough. That I abandoned myself long before she left me 7 months before. After the melt, there was the carefully placed shit and leaf rot to push through, and the dare to trust the unknowable gardener to provide just the right thing at just the right time. I have been dead. There was no great shakes. I look for resurrection. This actually, I'm going to read another section from that short story. This is like when I think of Grand Island in the 70s, and particularly the Grand Island dad. For some reason, I always go back to this image of the solitary figure sitting on a lawn chair just inside the shadow of a garage, drinking by himself. And it's always just kind of really haunted me in a lot of ways. And it's that aloneness and that silence that, that night, maybe at best, was it Lyle Bresmer or something like that? Like he's called the play-by-play for the Huskers, on the radio. When people used to still listen to that games on the radio. But this is from that, again, from that short story. And it's really kind of focused on the fathers, the parents, most of the fathers. Most of the fence crowd were from blue-collar households, the children of men and women who worked with their hands. Their fathers coming home with blistered palms and lips, and their mothers with carpal tunnel syndrome. Many of their grandparents had been farmers in the now mythological time of family farms and small towns, and their parents had grown up with the belief in the greatness of America and the permanence of the farm. In the early 1970s, government policies turned decidedly in favor of corporate farming, a trend that seemed to discover cocaine by the 1980s. You don't need a closet full of farm-made t-shirts to know what was happening. Banks took everything they could grab, and corporations consolidated the rest. The old folks moved to town, spent their mornings sipping instant coffee at cafes, talking about the old days and finding excuses to keep voting for politicians who took the bankers' money and the farmers' land and blamed it on the poor. Finnick and Constantine and the others grew up with farmers who were cut off from America's military glory by Vietnam, and from their birthright as family farmers by the federal government and Big Ag. Their fathers and mothers that moved to town parlaying their jack-of-all-trade childhoods on the farm for hour after hour, working on cars, hour after hour driving trucks, hour after hour standing in a factory, hour after hour hammering nails. They wanted something different for their children, but they didn't know what. They developed an almost religious belief in the power of a college education as an economic cure-all, an achievement that would solve for their children the hidden woes that troubled the parents when not busy at work or around the house or watching the game. Finnick and Constante came from families that loved them, but didn't know how to talk to them. We're getting to the sentimental part. Get your hands. You guys doing all right? Yeah. I can't do anything about it. So now you're on your own. I always tell my students, like, if something happens, if you pass out or something, I'm dragging you into the hall and I'm saying you didn't come to class. I'm not killing with that, all right? It's like you don't feel good, just stay away. One of the things before, my wife brings this back there. 28 years next month?
Yeah.
I lost count.
I think so.
Yeah, somewhere under 30.
97.
So we went through crazy everything. That's all I did. They're like, oh, yeah, you don't go to church and all that stuff. But yeah, once once you like experience birth, it's a miracle, and you know, you're just gonna be flooded with all this light and stuff. That didn't happen. It was science. To me, it's just like, no, it's just science. It's biology. This is how things work. But so I read this poem. It's called Hinge. If there were angels, they stayed silent, and if God reached down, he didn't touch my shoulder. Neither did Mary hover near, and neither did Margaret of Antioch sponge my wife's forehead. Yet in those moments of deep breath, as our daughter pounded her way past the hinge she was making in the body of her mother, as our daughter slithered into the disinfected chill of the hospital room, my beliefs bowed down to the sticks and stones of life. My warrior, my wife. Low gnarls of pain rushing up through her throat, white slime of vernix and amniotic fluid spilling to the table. Our daughter wet, smell of damp earth, good Merlot. The ebb and flow of yes and no, the promise of worlds to come. Yay. And then we took her home. And within a couple of years, she was totally obsessed with Snow White. Like totally obsessed, like scared. So she was just under 2. We're watching Snow White every day on the DVD. I think that was probably her first DVD, actually, was Snow White. We're watching that every day. She's acting out all the parts. She's wearing her costume, her Halloween costume. I'm pretty sure from about the 10th of October until right before Thanksgiving. Every single day. So that this is part of this next poem. Another part of this poem is one of my aunts, just an absolute beautiful, gentle soul. She gave me this wildly inappropriate gift right before our daughter was born, and it was one of those baby books things. You know, it's like my favorite foods as a child was, you know, new film books and stuff like that. So, but it was kind of religious based. I had like a lot of religious questions, you know, and which again, I'm just not into. It didn't stick that way, and it was a Thomas Kincaid book, and I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure. And Mom, just close your ears on this. I know some people are really into him. I really, it makes my skin crawl. I really love. They're pretty and they're decorative. So she gave me this religious Thomas Kincaid book, right? And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And she's so nice, it kept me mean. So it's anyway, and then my daughter's running around with the Snow White thing. So the name of this poem is Sensing God. Sitting at the table by the window, I watched the wind pluck leaves from trees. Halfway through November, once again my daughter is wearing Halloween Snow White dress. On the TV DVD, Snow White performs her now daily habit of stretching the sleeping death from her arms, wringing it out of her neck. I'm still answering questions I started 20 months ago. I sense the presence of God when animals and dwarfs dance on TV. My daughter squeals and pants, happy, one arm flung towards the ceiling, at the end of the other a fistful of dress. She dances around the rocking chair, feet jackhammering the floor, tattering the hem of the dress even more. I sense the presence of God when. This morning a small rabbit stayed still as frost while I ran out of trash. Last week a possum moved from shadow to porch light before melting back into the night. And last month, 3 fat blackbirds mulling about our lawn, sifting the ashes of lost dreams, becoming corporeal in the light of just dawn. Snow White rides away on Prince Charming's horse, and my daughter waves bye-bye to the screen, trippingly turning towards me. Daddy, dance? Dance? Arms held high and white as God. It was around that time, so I wrote maybe like a handful of poems, you know, about my kid, about my first child, I guess. But I started really thinking in terms of like the ethics of it all, right? And it's just like, is it fair? Right? Because in a way, it's like, and this is a lot of layers to this. You're using people who really have no defense, right, against how you're interpreting So I started really kind of wrestling with that. Maybe I shouldn't write about my kids, especially. It's easy to write about the dead because, they deserve it. But, that's really when I stopped. So Nico, I'm sorry. I did write a poem though for my son, for Nico. This fairly recent, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, can't remember when. And I'll just explain a little bit about it. So I do go through, periods where I'm kind of like looking for the off ramp, let's say, right? And kind of like I just can't do this anymore, and stuff like that. And this poem centers on a time when I was going through that. I decided like I just got to go. I can't. And I was really kind of down to the when and where kind of thing, and because you want to be careful. You don't want to mess up somebody's life. And I was sitting at a stoplight on the way to work, and I swear to God, the Clash comes on. Should I stay or should I go? And I lost it. I thought it was something funny. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. And how could I die when funny shit happens? So a few years later, I read this, and I guess in a sense the prompt is in the title. For my son who asked if I had ever thought of committing suicide. The last time enough pills like orphaned hall notes, baggie in the pocket on my bag. And I was driving to work trying to decide the when and the where, when the Clash came on and I laughed at the ironic nothingness, and thought of you at home and thought of your mother and sister and thought I should stay. Just, yes, stay. Yay, enough of that nonsense. I keep looking at the time, but I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know why. Like I keep thinking, maybe this time my eyes have worked. I want to do, there's not too much. So I want to do an excerpt. I started a couple years ago at the community college where I work, Johnson County Community College in Bart, Kansas. I started doing these like Shakespeare lectures, right? And basically tied to whatever Heart of America in Kansas City, whatever Heart of America Shakespeare is doing that summer, as a way of kind of prepping people for, kind of for the play that we're going to see and stuff, and just giving them, my thoughts, like yours, but just kind of like this is kind of how I read the play and what I'm thinking about when I'm reading the play. Last summer was Julius Caesar, so that April I did a talk on Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and I wanted to bring in a section where, again, 40th reunion, it was something I think that a lot of us might recognize, hopefully. When I was looking at Caesar, I was thinking a lot of transitions, and so that's why I kind of like really structured the talk on it. It was this idea of transitions, right? So under Julius Caesar, Rome is transitioning from a republic to basically a dictatorship, right, under the Caesars. While he's writing it, Shakespeare and his company are transitioning from kind of their theater in the northern suburbs to a theater in the southern suburbs, the Globe, right? The Globe is new, they're just transitioning to that. His work is transitioning to a different kind of work from the 1590s. England is transitioning from a kingdom to an empire at this time. The year that he wrote Julius Caesar was also the year the East India Company was formed, right? It started the colonialism project for the English. I'm transitioning. We, some of us here, right, are transitioning. We're almost 60, right? They're entering into the 5th act of our life, right? This is, right, it's time to wrap things up. So I was kind of thinking of all that, and kind of my obsession with transition, with time and stuff like that. There's been asked, myself, I was like, why am I so obsessed with this? I might think about this constantly, how to understand time. And so I wanted to bring in a section that I wrote about that, because like I said, it's mostly about us. Sorry, there's one other thing that I can't remember, and I'll see if I figure it out. Okay, I'll just tell you. I was introduced to Shakespeare at an early age, but not because my parents were rich, white, or cultured. I was introduced to Shakespeare through TV. My guess is my first exposure to Shakespeare was either through Gilligan's Island or Bugs Bunny, shows that also served as my introduction to opera. And the episodes of each would have been created before I was born. A lot of us here could say the same. I have what might be termed a generational fascination with this. Gen X was the first generation whose life spanned the collapse of time. We were unwilling pioneers of sorts. We were fed, forcefully at times, a steady diet of boomer pop culture along with our own. I want to pause over this for a second because no generation has ever had to deal with this before Gen X. Pop culture is supposed to be ephemeral, a momentary glimmer of media that fades along with youth. Its purpose isn't cultural, but commercial. It's about selling product, moving units, the hyper-commercialism of now. Pop culture is meant to go away in a blink, temporary and ticklish as a bathtub fart. What happened, though, was boomers held onto the pop culture of their own fleeting youth and foisted it on the rest of us. And this isn't just generational axe grinding. I have receipts, as the kids these days like to say. Oldies radio stations were invented in the early 1970s, around the time that we were starting kindergarten. And they weren't selling new records. They existed as a salve for the wounded egos of an aging generation that didn't want to exit the stage gracefully. So much of the pop culture of our youth centered on the good old days nostalgia of our parents. From the mid-70s to the mid-80s, American Graffiti, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Sha Na Na, Lenny and the Squigtones, Grease, Animal House, The Big Chill, Stand By Me, Wonder Years, Pee-wee's Playhouse. I'd argue that in some ways Back to the Future was the ultimate Gen X movie. Like the main character, we were forced to live in two different pop culture timelines. And to top it off, as the last generation with a decent attention span, we absorbed it all. Eminem references Leave It to Beaver. Beastie Boys reference Brady Bunch. We don't blink an eye. In a split second, we could spin the radio dial from oldies to top 40 to college rock and sing along to each. And thanks to the desperate need of cable television to fill time with syndicated programming, we can still cite specific plot points of episodes from Leave It to Beaver, Star Trek, Brady Bunch, Twilight Zone, and even Andy Griffith, again, most of which originally aired before we were even born. Or if we wanted to see a movie from the 1920s or 50s or 70s, we just popped into the local Blockbuster or recorded it off of one of the basic cable channels. Since, like cable TV and oldie stations, VCRs also became a thing during our childhood. Not only did we know the pop culture of our generation, we know boomer pop culture better than most boomers do. You bet your sweet dippy. Go the judge. We even inherited their nostalgia. That's something that really hit me when I was on this like parent-teacher thing he had at the kids' elementary, and they decided that for like some kind of spring, I'm not really big on the details, but for like the spring celebration thing, they decided they wanted to do a sock hop, which honestly blew my mind because even as they're getting all glossy-eyed and Autumn Smiley over the thought of child-sized poodle skirts and miniature juicers, none of us were old enough to have actually experienced a sock hop. Our sock hops all came from screens, right? Movies and TV. The parents and teachers weren't nostalgic for a remembered experience. They were nostalgic for nostalgia, someone else's nostalgia. And this is all before our teen and young adult years, before we get the computers and the internet. Gen X had a front row seat for this transition. Our roots are still analog, but the world we grew into is digital. A glossy green screen on which anything can be projected by the man behind the curtain. The internet accelerated things and added two-way communication, but the process started in our childhood, while the internet later will obliterate distance in the clock, pop culture nostalgia, and technology we grew up with obliterated the calendar, and what's the result? We can't forget. And everything references something else. We are a living palimpsest. A century of pop culture references bleeding through our pages like strange fruit. Every thought's a hyperlink or a footnote. And that's why listening to us talk sometimes feels like flipping through the television channels. Just one random reference after another. And what happens when you remove the element of time from the rush of experience? You end up with the eternal perspective, the perspective of God. Everything happening all at once and nothing immediate to feel real. And the problem we run into is we lack the wisdom of divinity, the ability to find meaning in the torrent of sensory stimuli. As Lou Reed sang, I guess, but I just don't know. So we collect, compile, and consume with no end beyond collecting, compiling, and consuming. We let them scribble away our humanity and leave us as nothing but desiring machines. No brains, no heart, no courage, only appetites and the compulsion to consume. Here we are now, right? Entertain us. That, I think, is why I'm obsessed with the idea of time and the transitional states between eras. We grew up watching time dissolve. I'm getting older. And, which is all right, you know, everything's not dead. So, and I guess one of the things I think about getting older, one thing I've noticed, is things that, well, it's said the ghosts get heavier. You're constantly living with like these other possibilities of life, right? And like every year has more possibilities that you didn't take, more choices that you chose elsewhere, you know. And so we sometimes become haunted by those roads not taken. And I was thinking about this as to writing this next poem. Also, this Gertrude Stein, who's just a goddess. She's like a goddess from a different religion. I recognize her power, I just don't get it. But she had this great quote. She was asked something about, it was something like, what, you know, what do you hate Oakland? And her answer was, there's no there there. Right? Which it just blew my mind when I read that, right? That sense of like there-ness, you know, is missing. So this poem's called The There. You're wasting my life, he says, sitting next to me on the couch watching TV. His coat soggy with boredom, his pockets stuffed with the scraps of everything I could have been. You don't even like this show, he observes observantly. I was just flipping through the channels, I say, which is usually enough. You haven't laughed once, and yet here you are. I'm getting irritated. The moths are fluttering inside me, hungry for light. This show confuses cleverness for funny, the pot for the piss. It hasn't earned its intentions. I'm standing on the bottom and my finger jabbing at the air. The painted eyebrows of the actors arch like shitting dogs. The writers are the bastards of a thesaurus and jock itch. My screams have hit Al Pacino levels. A prison break of words scraping the ceiling to Rankin Bass dust swirls. I crumple, tears drip, dripping from my chin to my shirt. He watches without word, so what can I do but keep talking? My tears liquefied frustration, my teeth chipped from the bones of a shipwreck. Where's the there, the there, the there, the there, the there? I can't stop, please God, put a quarter on my tongue. The saddest ghosts, he says, are those that never lived. That's stupid, I say, sitting back on the couch, eyes aligned back at the TV. Probably got that from a movie. The show has come back. We watch. I assumed he walked in when I wasn't looking, but like the broken clock on the crooked wall, I'm mostly wrong. He's been there from the beginning. This poem's called Words. I ran across this quote from Jacques Derrida, who's this French dude. He said, "Yes, I have only one language, yet it is not mine." And again, it's like one of those quotes you just stop reading. It's like, oh God, wow, that's so cool. What does that mean? So I ended up with a poem. And it's just called Words. No vehicle but the words on loan. Ancient words and new, borrowed, not begotten. Words plucked from the dappled web of family and teachers and friends. The dried up ink of words in the endless books, the blink of words on screen, the ecstatic words of television, the billboard's Crayola box of letters figuring words and words and words.
The library is closing in 1 hour at 6 o'clock. If you need to call in the program. Study rooms will shut down 10 minutes before closing and attendance at 6 o'clock.
That's such a nice voice. Sounds like a calming voice. That's like, yeah, that's like, we should have that in every baby's room. Go back to sleep, dummies. I should probably start, sorry. No vehicles but the words on loan, ancient words and new, borrowed, not begotten, words plucked from the dappled web of family and teachers and friends. The dried up ink of words in the endless books, the blink of words on screen, the ecstatic words of television, the billboard's Crayola box of letters bearing words and words and words. The words passed down, not mine. The words passing over, not mine. The words tested on, not mine. The words you paid for, not mine. Someone else's luggage filled with someone else's clothes. They said, carry this till you're there, so of course I did. It only cost me silence. At the end, you know they'll take it all back. Over your remains, your numbers, your name. Maybe a few words to mark your mark in the game. Yeah. So I'm trying to read my handwriting. It really is like really, really bad. I like it. And Dodge Elementary, they tried so hard. They really did, so it's not them. It was me. Okay, so again, words. I got obsessed with words and just kind of the mechanical process of creating words, how our jaws move from lips, teeth, tongue. We push air up through our throat and stuff. And I wanted to write a poem about that. And so when I was writing this poem maybe wrote over maybe from when I started, like, kind of got it wrapped up. And I did a lot of just like laying around saying like the same word over and over and over again, which is kind of weird. Like we've been married for 20-some years. Just like I don't know, just doing stuff. Yeah, this poem is called "The Bones Beneath." I really like this poem. Say death, for instance. Tongues tip easily slipping from the incisors' fat bellies, and alighting on the small saws of the tops of the bottom teeth. Death. Barely a breath to empty of life, and every life touching it. Some words supple as the flesh of fish, deadly as the bones beneath. Say love, and watch how the tongue hides behind the teeth before turning bashful. The breath rushing forward, the upper teeth dropping down to the lower lip like a gate. The heart at war with itself, the fangs lying in wait. Family, too. A word heavy as ghost, soft as a cat. The passive-aggressive gentility of consonants, almost smothering the bitter I in the middle. Family. A word that sits over your heart. Its claws slipping through your shirt. Its claws slipping into flesh. Yeah, and this is the last one. It's a very, very short poem. It's one I wrote actually specifically for this. For you guys, for my class, all that stuff, for the school. You know, it's called Hell Yeah, I went to Catholic school. You might want to cross yourself. Hell yeah, I went to Catholic school. And when you die, you ascend to join the Holy Threesome, the Gen X Elysium, forever fucking around. All right, that's it. Thank you much.